SuperAI 2025 here in Singapore. And with me today, I'm very pleased and very privileged to have Yanay with Bright Data, who's going to be joining us to talk about the latest transformation taking place in the AI era powered by data. So thank you so much, Yanay, for your time today.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
Right. So you have worked with data for a long time, right? And so, in this age of AI, what are the exciting use cases you've seen?
Wow, there's a bunch of cool stuff out there. I think anything that is about removing those small, petty, manual things that we used to do, and nobody really liked it, but never thought about actually removing it because they had to be done. I think the world's going to be a much smoother place without it. So I think about it the same way I think about hot showers, right? Up until 70, 80 years ago, most people didn't have hot showers at all, anywhere in the world. And now we take it for granted. And if you don't have hot showers these days, you feel bad. I think Agentic AI is going to take another step in the terms of comfortness that we get in the day-to-day. And people are going to look at these days in a few years' time and say, how did you live without an AI agent telling you what to wear and what to do and which pill to take today for your specific chemical composition of your brain to make sure that you maximize your reality that day or that you feel the best that you can. And it's going to develop into every area of our lives. And it's just human nature that AI is just going to make things seamless until we can't live without them.
Right. And you are the CMO with Bright Data, right? So how have you been using Agentic AI in your current role? Or how do you foresee it transforming your role?
So it's a charged subject. The reason is, and I'll start from the psychological aspect of it, and it's true for not just marketeers, it's true for, I think, anybody who works for a company. There's an anxiety that exists with people that AI is going to take their job. And this is a legitimate fear that people have. And whether AI will end up replacing their job or not, that's the current situation. And executives need to realize that and acknowledge that. Because if you're thinking about, when I was thinking about, how do I do AI transformation for my organization, which is the marketing and sales development organizations, when you think about a plan, a roadmap of how to introduce AI transformation and get all the good stuff that you can get out of it, at the end of the day, these are people that are working that need to kind of help you. You can't, as an executive, do AI transformation by yourself. You have to have every person in the team, whatever they do, to be invested in this and to march towards the same direction that you want to go for. And if you don't start by acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is we're not integrating AI to replace you. We're integrating AI to elevate you, to enable you, to augment your capabilities, to make sure that you are worth more than you are today to the organization, which will make you even more indispensable. If you don't start with that attitude, you're going to start seeing a lot of rejection and fear.
And resistance to change, I guess.
Correct. And then that's just not the right path to do it. And I actually don't think it will lead to anything meaningful, because if you look at successful AI transformation processes, it's not just one guy deciding we need to be an AI company and then everybody just over a day changes everything they do. You need the creativity of the people actually doing the job to first identify the processes that should be automated with AI, but then also identify the processes that were never done because nobody got to them. Nobody could have done them because they were too manual or too in scale. And now with those new training wheels, with those new superpowers that you're kind of giving to the people that you work with and giving them also the kind of the confirmation that you could experiment and you could try to see where this leads, that's where the magic really happens. And so for us, specifically in marketing, we've been able to automate a lot of the things that we did manually and empower the people that are doing it to do things that are more strategic. So one example out of many, we have a market analyst in the team. And the market analyst's job, as in any marketing team, is to understand the market and to live it, to breathe it, to see the pulse of it, and to update me and the different stakeholders in marketing about what's going on with the industry, with our customers, with our competitors. And then also enable the sales team and customer success team internally, for everybody to be connected to what's going on outside, right? And so with AI, we found that very quickly we can automate the manual part, the specific part of the job, which actually didn't make the market analyst unneeded. It did make the market analyst more of a thinker, more of a strategic person, because in his mind, the mental framework that we used are, you now have many junior market analysts working for you. You used to be an individual contributor. You're not an individual contributor anymore. Not from the humans, from the human's perspective, maybe yes, but from the production perspective, you're not an IC anymore. You have a team of junior marketing analysts. What do you want them to do? And what would you do with the time that you have left? Which is more than what you used to have. And so it immediately elevated, both in seniority and the way of thinking, that particular position, which allows us now to do more for the internal stakeholders, to know more, to be more on time, to have more in-depth analyses that one person could not have handled with everything that's going on out there. So this is just kind of one example out of many where every role in the marketing team has to be infused and evolved to the next level. And one of the ways that we achieve that is that we have what we call an AI officer in the marketing team.
Okay, so it's a AI as in AI.
Correct. So it's somebody in the team that used to do marketing technology, so very technologically inclined, but is now getting a title saying, you are the AI officer, we call him AI daddy internally, of the team, which means it's your job to orchestrate moving us to the next level. It doesn't mean he's the sole responsibility, but...
Oh, it's like an AI ambassador.
Yeah, you can look at it like that. And then every person on the team should have, at any point in given time, a project, an AI project, that assesses what they do manually that they could automate and give to AI so they can focus on other things, bigger things, different things. And so the marketing team at Bright Data is about, 35 people. And the sales development is about 20 more. And so each of them have a AI project at the same time, trying to assess these things and trying to evolve. So every couple of months, we have a new step in our evolution where everybody already did one round of automation with AI. They're already enabled. And now they're looking for the next thing that can evolve them. And I foresee this process to go on for a few years because also the technology is evolving. So, for example, we see things now that we want to be doing that we can't do right now with the technology. But the process of thinking about what would you do if you had a lot of little minions that are agentic, what would you do with them, is some sort of it's like a new mental muscle that you start operating. And once you start thinking like that, there's no way back, in a good way. So we already know where we want to achieve with each position. And there's a vision, a roadmap for capabilities. So all of a sudden, every person in the organization, and I'm sure it's not only in marketing teams, I'm only talking from my experience, but every person becomes, an engineer and the CEO of his own function and looks at it from a higher level, which allows people to evolve also conceptually.
Well, there's a saying that AI agents, in some ways, we can kind of think of them as like interns, right? That are learning, and you can get them to help you with some of the heavy duty stuff, while you go off and do the more strategic stuff. So that's one way of looking at it.
Right, that's a good analogy, and one of the advantages of having it as AI and not actual interns is that you can feel more comfortable to make mistakes with interns. Let's say that you have a few tasks that you think the intern could perform, but they're actually not well thought of, and maybe they're not that useful. And so you would probably think twice before you give it to an actual intern because of the implications, because they will complain. Maybe they'll feel not great about it and feedback you, but you can throw anything at AI, and worst case scenario, it just doesn't work out, and you move on.
Yeah, the experimentation cycle is a lot shorter, isn't it? And you can try many different scenarios and be comfortable with the fact that, if one doesn't work, there's no human emotional situation to manage in that case. So talking about experimentation, right? I want to touch on one sort of question that many people have when it comes to data. Of course, you are with Bright Data, so we have to talk about data in some ways. Okay, so synthetic data, right? There's a lot of saying that, it is a great way to experiment with cases or rare scenarios, rare situations, especially, for example, self-driving cars in, accident or crash scenarios. You can do it with simulation. You don't want to do an actual car crash. What are your thoughts about synthetic data to complement the current sort of real-life data in training AI?
So to answer this, I need to give a disclaimer about who we are, so it doesn't seem like I'm pushing any agenda, which I'm not. We're the largest public web data company in the world. We're the largest web data infrastructure for AI. So we're the big providers of data behind the biggest models and the biggest agentic companies and even regular companies, traditional, that are going through the AI transformation. So we collect public data from the web, which is real data that exists out there, and it's public, meaning anybody can use it, and it's not behind a login or anything. And we provide it for whatever purposes the AI need, right? And I think it's important to acknowledge that synthetic data is a solution born of a necessity and a challenge. And that challenge is that sometimes there is not enough data to train a certain model. There's no other reason why synthetic data would exist. Meaning, if there was unlimited amount of data on the internet for every single need that a model would need for its training, there wouldn't be a thing as synthetic data. The concept of synthetic data is a compromise. And when you get to places where there's no other data left that is public and can be consumed or bought legally, obviously, to train the model, then and only in those cases, I feel that synthetic data, which is a compromise both in quality and the issues that it creates, should be considered. Now, it's the easier path because it's much easier to create synthetic data than actually collect, and pay for real data. But I think enough research came out in the last couple of years to show that it requires what it saves you in being able to get that data that maybe you didn't have before, or what it saves you in costs. It costs you in additional mechanisms for sanity check and quality assurance that you have to do with this type of data, which is essentially kind of like training a model with its own output. And especially in cases where the output is important and could be life risking, like the example you gave, like autonomous cars, and but it also in financial data that can make decisions that will cost companies billions. I think I would be very careful in entertaining this type of data before I've exhausted all of the other data acquisition capabilities and opportunities that a company has for a specific model.
There's a fine balance, isn't it? Like when we use synthetic data, we have to assure that, like you say, the quality assurance has to be there, that it considers real life realities, right? So how do you get the real life realities if you are constructing synthetic data, right? So it's like a circular argument, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit like that. And this is where the danger comes from. We all know, we all use, I guess, many of us use AI in the day-to-day when we use our ChatGPT or Claude or DeepSeek or whatever it is. And we do see sometimes we get a glimpse of what hallucination looks like. And in many cases, because we use it as a B2C way and we use it, in our daily lives, the stakes might not be that high. Okay, you want to find a restaurant and it didn't really find the right restaurant, or you wanted sushi and it gave you a pizza restaurant as a sushi. It's all okay because those are small mistakes, and anyway, our expectations are not that high in this early stage of the technology. But when the stakes are high, it becomes a serious thing, and that's where more consciousness should go into this, and a lot of human oversight, which is kind of defeating the purpose to begin with.
That's right. Yeah, the trade-offs is it's a fine balance. So the economic cost versus the, ethics, right? Ensuring that we are implementing or adopting AI, that is a responsible AI, takes into account all the different considerations. The trade-off is very difficult when it comes to synthetic data.
Correct. And I also think that maybe it's somewhere there's also an educational issue with this, because in some cases, companies turn to synthetic data when they feel they've exhausted the actual real public web data that could feed the model instead. meaning the real type of data. And sometimes they just need to be inspired or maybe guidelined to how to get the data. So in your example, let's take your example. Autonomous cars needs to see a lot of videos of cars hitting people and how to avoid people, right? And if a company went to buy this synthetic data, we already talked about the issues. But there are a lot of videos online in any video website you can think of that include a lot of hit and misses of cars from real life situations that maybe hasn't been implemented into the model. And so it's just a matter of how do you find that, because you don't want to consume the entirety of all videos that include a road into your model. That would be an overkill, all right, and very costly. But there are ways to find the specific type of input on the internet, which is humanity's largest database. And to feed that might be just enough to avoid inputting some non-real data.
Right, yes. So sometimes it's just a matter of convenience, isn't it, for many organizations, I guess, when it comes to turning towards synthetic data. It's a lot quicker.
Definitely the easy route.
Right. So talking about, there's lots of video data out there, and, it's perhaps a challenge to get that into the AI models. I want to talk about unstructured data, right? So of which are videos and voice and, are some examples. So what are the kind of challenges we're talking about, in getting into AI models, or is that a misconception?
It's definitely a thing. It's definitely an issue. So if we look at how for your specific question about how the data starts and how does it get into a model, where the unstructuring and the other data issues come from. If we look at how the industry looks like, the end customer is the model, the engineers feeding the model and training the model. And the data starts, if it's public data, it's out somewhere on the internet. We're an AI infrastructure company, so we're the ones collecting the data. But in many cases, that's not enough, and that's not ready to feed the model. So after we collect the data, there's a few main things that need to be done in order to make it useful and also to be digested quicker by the models, and to also save compute in order to get the value that this data is supposed to bring, meaningful upside performance to a certain model, right? So one of the main things is structuring the data. And that's actually one of the simpler problems that we have. We have, on top of what we call the AI infrastructure layer for data, which is us, there's a certain layer of an industry emerging of any data manipulation that needs to do between the data collection to actual infusing that into the model. So structuring is one thing. We see a lot of data labeling companies, which is, if we have a large repository of whatever it is, it could be usually not text, because text is pretty straightforward, but imagery or video or audio, you can't just feed it into the model. You have to tag it and tell the model what it is, this specific type of data that you're feeding it, so it gets more context, so it gets to learn with, this is the human oversight that we're talking about. And so there's a new layer of companies that are doing, and other manipulations, for example, product matching. For example, if you want to feed company data into a model, you can get LinkedIn data, but that's only one aspect of the data. Then you want to get the Crunchbase data, which is different types of data points for that company. But you need to make sure that the Crunchbase data talks about the same record, which is the same company from LinkedIn, and maybe on Glassdoor, which is where the reviews are. That's already a third point. And then maybe anybody that talks about that company on Instagram, that's a different data point. And all of them essentially need to, in the database, need to connect over this one point, which is that particular entity, that company, and then fed into the model. So we have product or item matching, which needs to be done. And there's a few others that I won't get to, but these type of manipulations that the data needs to go through is growing and is evolving based on what the LLMs need. And us as a company, we, depending on the size of the project, sometimes we'll pass the manipulation to our solution partners. And sometimes if we see that there's value with us doing it ourselves, then we'll do the heavy lifting ourselves. But there's definitely an economy of what to do with the data, after you've collected it before you inject it into the model.
There's some discussions about whether we can apply unsupervised learning techniques to the labeling process as well, where we don't rely on, I guess, so much on the manual input, on the human input. So I think it's another big topic.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether we have time to get into it.
Right. Better not.
Perhaps next time. Okay. So I'm just. Oh, wow. I'm just conscious of the time. Right. We are having such a good conversation. So one last question, if I may. Right. So I want to go back into this data conversation. Right. So for a long time, I guess in the last decade or so, we talk about the big data era. We need a lot of data, more data, the better, we get better analytics, right? But in this AI era, I think what we are saying is that more is not necessarily better. We have to have quality assurance. But on top of that, we need to have the human in the loop as well, consideration. So data has to be in context. So what do you think that, looking ahead, what kind of lessons would we, take from this AI era to say, what makes data good? What is good data?
It's a big question.
It's a big question, yes.
I think a way to answer this is to understand that this industry, data for AI industry, works in waves. And so the answer to the question, what is good data, is contextual, because for AI, good data is the most accurate, relevant, contextually tagged, structured data that will help the reasoning meaningfully improve from measurable A to measurable B. And anything that is outside of the definition that I just gave could just be additional noise, compute power, and time wasted that is not going to meaningfully improve the model. So in some cases, less is more is relevant when you think about the true capabilities needed. And I'm sure because of the cost, there are people that think a lot and think hard before they decide to consume more data for their model, because they know the implications. And unlike last year, where there was a race to feed as much data as possible into each model, because nobody really knew what is the delta in performance when you feed another gigabyte of data into the model, I think now we're a bit more sober. And with the emergence of specialized models and not just the general purpose models, it's definitely going down that route of very particular, very niche oriented, could be petabytes, but very niche oriented data sets that are meant for one type of reasoning.
And you also mentioned more real-time type of data as well.
Yes. So the real-time aspect is a different world. Once you train a model, LLMs have very kind of, it's weird to say basic on such a magic, but LLMs have fairly basic functionality when it comes to what they can do. So you can converse with them, they can give you input, you give them input, they give you output. Agentic is the next step, which we're all seeing emerging. By the way, not a real industry as yet, but it'll get there, because at this point it cannot not get there with what Agentic AI can and should do, right? But still not masses. But basically, Agentic is taking the LLMs as a brain and then adding capabilities. Think of legs and arms, but not in the physical sense, but in the sense of capabilities of doing things online, internally, in systems and platforms, etc. And that becomes a different way or different set of needs to access data. So any agent that needs public data will need to act as a bot outside on the web, access website, interact with them in some cases, take them some of the data, collect some of the data, the public data from them in some aspects. Some agents will not need to do it. For example, internal organizational agent, right? If you have an agent that reads your emails and creates calendar invites for you, they don't need to take anything from outside. They have the emails and they have the access to your calendar, and they don't need public data, and definitely not real time, but in general, not public data. But anything that requires external, if B2C is, I don't know, booking tickets, or making plans, or sending outwards messages, or collecting some data for real time, or sort of pricing analytics, or for anything else that requires going out to the web, seeing some data, interacting with some website and collecting that data, that's a different set of needs that the agentic AI revolution is essentially needing. And we found as Bright Data that we're actually set up perfectly to service those agents, because what we've been doing as a data collection company for the past 10 years is build a framework for browsing for non-humans. And that's exactly what the agents are. And so one of our main adoption cases in the world of AI is from agentic AI companies that need browsing infrastructure for their agents to be able to go outside and do everything that they need to do on the web without getting blocked. And the agentic companies that build all those agents, those smart agents that are very capable and are failing in what we call the last mile, which is the second they go online because of some CAPTCHA or anti-bot mechanism, those ones very quickly realize the need for the browsing infrastructure, the connection, the last mile connection to the internet, and that's usually when they talk to us.
Right, that's excellent. That's really exciting. I can't wait to see what happens next year at SuperAI, right? How much we would have gone, in 1 year to this agentic AI, the maximum potential possible. So one final last question, my favorite question. So do you think that, in a couple of years' time, you'll be talking to, say, not myself face-to-face, but rather an AI clone of me with my AI voice? And do you think that is something that we would want as humans?
It's an interesting question. I would hate for it not to be you. But there's definitely a future where we can clone ourselves and get the nuances. It's just a matter of how much data we feed the mechanism. For example, you're a popular creator on YouTube, right? If you create enough video content to feed into your model, the more video content you'll feed it of you talking to people and asking questions, the higher chance it will be like you. My take is probably not going to be able to replace you for at least a few years. Again, which is a good thing because we want to elevate. You could next year maybe sit with an AI assistant that will whisper in your ear what the next question would be. But it will not replace you in the nuances of human conversation, at least not in a couple of years.
Yes, I think maybe not in a couple of years, but I'm just wondering whether the audience would like the idea of two AI talking to each other on a podcast, But that's something to watch out for, I guess. That would be quite exciting, I guess, initially. But after that, I don't know whether the excitement will just tilt off and then we want the human touch back.
Somebody will do it for sure. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Right, okay. So on that note, thank you so much, Yanay, for your time today.
Thank you.